It's full time.
Well, it was another round of upsets and footy bombshells in round 3, and we'll take a closer look at all of it here on Full Time, brought to you by AIA Vitality. I'm Ayrton Woolley, joined again, of course, by Hawthorn champion Shane Crawford. Crawford, they brought us back for another week.
Yeah, we're ready to go. I'm still waiting on the boxer short on the couch, but we'll get there. Round 3, how awesome.
You might be waiting some time, Crawford. Let's take a look at the results so far in round 3. And it began on Thursday night. Your mob, the Hawks, bouncing back against Richmond. North Melbourne upset by Sydney. Collingwood again dominant before that match with Gold Coast and Adelaide this afternoon. A massive result for the Suns there.
There was a few sides that I've circled. The Dogs, the Hawks, the Swans and the Blues had losses last week, but they had great attitude, great hunger, and they just all worked together as a team. So this is going to be a real tough season for footy tipping, because you just really have to get into the headspace of where the players are at and what the clubs are doing and how they're attacking it. But a great weekend of footy. And it's good to see Gold Coast and the Lions back up with 2 in a row. Fantastic.
Well, let's take a look now at the score from that Suns-Crows clash this afternoon. It really was a dominant display. Adelaide, they're just 1 goal to three-quarter time.
Oh, the Suns were awesome. My worry with the Suns, Adelaide's season was on the line, and obviously they're done and dusted for 2020. But what I loved about the Gold Coast, they really come to play after a really good win last week. Miller was on fire. Rao, they only had 20, but I tell you what, he had a huge impact, kicked a couple of goals. King's a wonderful forward. McPherson does a great job. But when I was watching Gold Coast and the way they were going about it, it's just great structure and courage and speed and composure, everything you want in a team. And have a look at the Adelaide Crows, Smith, Sloane, Walker, some of their older type players just not having an influence in the game. Walker kicking only 1, Fogarty only 1. So a couple of real key pillars down there, and Lynch not hitting the scoreboard. Real worrying times for the Adelaide Crows, unfortunately.
It's certainly been a really difficult start to the season for them, and one man who loves giving the Crows a whack is our man Warren Treadray over there in Adelaide. Tread, it's good to see you again. What have you made of all of this? You must be loving it.
Yeah, Woolsheds and Crawford, I think it's just a beautiful time to be alive in Adelaide. No, I'm only kidding. The reality is the football club is under the pump. They're under the pump from their list manager. They're under the pump from a board member, Mark Rasciudio, speaking out during the week about why players left and how much, breaking confidence in that area, and really on the field now, the heap of pressure, if the Crows fans think it's going to go away, it's not. On the field, they are deplorable at the moment. You boys saw it today. And I think over the last 2 weeks, the showdown and against the Suns today, they've conceded 29 goals. They've only kicked 9. And that was only, go back a couple of seasons ago, the highest scoring team in the comp, all the way heading into a grand final. And really from losing that moment in the 27 grand final against Richmond, it's just been all downhill, and it's been downhill like a ski slope, and they've never come back.
You got to feel for the coach, Matthew Nicks, because a new club, you got to find your way. You got to actually put a plan in place. You've got some older players. You got to get some younger players coming through. I think they've got to go back to the drawing board and go, listen, we are in a development year. We're just going to hold tight. We're not going to win many matches. It's quite obvious. Some of the older players, we've got to see where they fit. But you've got to really feel for him, because what an introduction. Alistair Clarkson was in the same boat, you know, back when he virtually started. The first 2 years, he found it really, really tough. But the lowest they've ever finished is 14th, Treaders, and I reckon the wooden spoon is virtually handed and on its way to South Australia.
Yeah, well, right now, I have to agree with you, Crawford, because the way they're playing, Matty Nicks, really, he's probably had it tough because he's inherited a list that's old. He's inherited a list that has Bryce Gibbs still with 1.5 years to do on a deal. They're paying Jenkins and Betts to play elsewhere. Taylor Walker looks not far from the end, and he's moving very slowly. Their midfield, which only a few years ago was the #1 clearance team in the comp with the Crouch brothers, you throw in Rory Sloane, who was arguably a couple of seasons ago one of the best 5 midfielders in the comp, and Riley O'Brien, a developing ruckman, was very good for him last year. They've hit a wall. They're being smashed by every midfield they're coming up against. Even Sydney, when they fell in by 3, or lost by 3 points in the first round of the season, 12 weeks ago, they still found a way to get smashed in the midfield. So the game is now, as you know, so midfield focused. You win the ball in, you pin it in your front half, and you can't come back. And Adelaide is really, really struggling. You make that comparison very interesting with Clarkson. Absolutely, but the difference Clarko got was able to go heavy to the draft inside the first 5 picks for the first couple of years. You know, we know Hodge was #1 draft pick. They followed soon after with Franklin, with Roughhead, with Lewis. You know, they just kept building a team. But Adelaide is just in a world of hurt. And as I said, some of their best players have moved on. Greenwood was dominant. and really it come back to haunt them. So they've got a lot of heavy lifting to do, and let's face it, it's 3 rounds in. Yeah, it's a long, long way to go in this season.
So what's going to be the headline in South Australia tomorrow around the Adelaide Crows? And it's probably lucky that they're hubbing in Queensland and they can pretty much stay out of the loop.
Coach, I think the coach is saying, Nix, forget tactics. We're coaching effort. For 2 weeks in a row, they haven't brought the effort. They've been beaten up by the kids. So maybe it's something like that, or as you mentioned, wooden spoons, bashing them on the cans and saying, we're not far away.
Treaders, I know you pushed for time. Just really briefly, you touched on Taylor Walker. Is he in their best 22 still?
Oh, I think at the stage, someone's got to force him out. But he just looks like a guy who's struggling with his body, and he just looks like, probably more so than anything, it's confidence-based. And when the ball's not coming in, geez, it makes it hard. So I'd persist with him yet, but he and Fogarty are pretty much the same player in Adelaide. Needs to go taller with someone who can crash a pack, but on their list, there's no one putting their hand up. So that's how bad their stocks look at the moment.
Hey, Treaders, we're trying not to whack Adelaide too much because new coach, just trying to find your feet. But you're right, and it's all about effort. But what about West Coast, just before you head off? The last 2 weeks, 5 goals, and then this weekend, 5 goal kickers, and this week 4 goal kickers. It's not good enough, and their key pillars down there, Kennedy and Darling, haven't been hitting the scoreboard. So what do they need to do? How do they get themselves going and get themselves into the game, especially the key forwards, which they rely on so heavily?
Well, I think it comes down, like Adelaide, it comes down to their midfield. Their midfield, they bring in Tim Kelly. They've still got Elliot Yeo. They've got Shuey, who's missed a bit of footy and not playing at the moment. But you look at their team, Nat Newey playing, they've got talent. I think it's between their ears and bringing effort. And, yeah, they're caught in a hub. But I think they need to take the opportunity to say, hey, with this shortened season, 17 rounds, 3 already gone, you've got to start winning some games of footy or your season will be over soon. I still think they'll give it a shake. But there's no doubt, once they get back west, I think they'll really click into gear. But it just doesn't happen. They've got to really start working hard in the moment. They've been outworked.
Well, Treaders, thanks so much for your time tonight. I know you're calling the game between Fremantle and Port Adelaide. We really appreciate it.
No worries, boys.
Wonder who he's going for, Port Adelaide or Fremantle?
Tough call, that one, with Treaders.
He was a very, very good forward. Like, he was one of the greats, he really was, and he had an awesome work ethic, and he slotted a lot of goals.
He will tell you too, Treaders. Good man, though. He's a good man. He's a good man. We will go on to the other massive news of the weekend, and it involves the Essendon Football Club. Of course, it emerged on Saturday that Connor McKenna had tested positive to COVID-19, and that's thrown the competition into chaos. It meant today at the Essendon Football Club out at Tullamarine, there were cleaners out there, that club undergoing a deep clean to ensure it remains COVID-free in the future. The players told to stay away for the next few days. Crawford, it really is huge for Essendon, isn't it?
Yeah, you feel for Essendon because, you know, they started the season so well, 2 wins. They win this week against Melbourne. They sit up on top of the ladder with, you know, Port Adelaide, and they're doing a great job. But all of a sudden their season's been thrown into turmoil. They don't know what's going to happen, how it's going to unfold, you know, which players have to go and be locked away. So it can really pretty much end a season, even though they're 2-0 at the moment.
Some really key bits of information today. Victoria's Chief Health Officer declared that any players who are regarded as close contact with Connor McKenna would need to isolate for the next 14 days. Now, we know the players who are in his training group. So, of course, they're asked to train in groups of 8 or 9. It increased to 9 in the past week. There are the names. It's in Essendon's entire backline. That's against AFL advice, but some big names there.
And not only that, so if you were to lock them away and yet they still have to play, that's what the AFL are saying. If you can field a 22 and some reserves, you've got to go out and play from weekend to weekend. So if you take them out of your side, Essendon have got no chance. It's going to wreck their whole season. And I think it's very unfair, really, when you think about it. They've finally got their feet back on the ground, starting to believe in a direction and where they're going. And then all of a sudden, their back 8 are taken out of the side. So you're going to have guys that have never defended before having to put their hand up to play fullback and play all the key forwards. It's going to be a disaster. So Essendon's season, when it looks so bright, all of a sudden turns into an absolute disaster.
Well, of course, it already has had an impact on the fixturing this weekend. Essendon's clash with Melbourne postponed to a later date. Demons still today hit the MCG, albeit just for a scratch match. Crawford, their plans too, I mean, thrown into chaos because they'll have to cram one of those matches in somewhere else later in the season. Yeah,
but I reckon what would have happened when we did start football again, even though round 1 and then round 2 were months and months apart, I think all the players were ready for uncertainty, and you just got to get on with it. Don't whinge about it. Just find a way to work through that. But the perfect thing that Melbourne did today was playing a scratch match. So it gives a great opportunity for the younger kids who aren't getting a game to show us what you got. The senior players who are ready to play against Essendon, they're going to treat it, like exactly what they need. And the problem for Melbourne, just gaining a bit of momentum, having that one hit out, finding a way across the line against the Blues, and then not playing the next week. That's not what you want. You want to get some real consistency with your work ethic through the week. You want to get back into a real routine. But it was good to see they had a big hit out, and it looked like it was quite vicious, which is what you want. You want to make sure it's highly competitive and very much like an AFL game when you get out there.
Just before we move on, you touched on the Demons there and how they would have prepared for this sort of thing. Just on Essendon, do you think it's fair that they're forced to play these games without their full team, or do you think it's just part and parcel of it?
Well, no, because they're not going to be the true side that we want Essendon to be. We know their very best side that they can field, highly competitive and obviously 2 and zip. So it's very unfair, really, when you look at it. But the AFL have got to find a way. I understand where the AFL are coming from, because they've got to try and find a way to keep the season going and get the competition playing a certain amount of games. But Essendon's season, you think they're going to make the 8, but all of a sudden, if that's going to be the case, you take the top 8 out of the side, they've got no chance, especially from a defending point of view, because it's a special craft down there to do what they do, to zone space, to man up when they have to move the ball out. You know, you take Sard out of there and it just goes on and on. So I think it's very unfair from an Essendon point of view.
Well, that story will continue to develop in the next 24 to 48 hours when you find out just how many players are forced to quarantine from Essendon. We move on now to your 4 points, Crawford, and we start with one of the AFL's favourite players.
How good, Eddie Betts. We love Eddie Betts. What an absolute superstar. I'm so glad that he ended up back at the Blues, but he was just, it was all work ethic. He was just trying to get to the right spots, and that's what he does. He runs and follows the ball. He gets front and square. He brings other players into the game, and his effort towards the end was just awesome. To keep the ball moving forward, to lay a tackle, which ended up being a match-saving tackle. Love him being back. Collingwood, they are hot. They are, I think they're definitely the side to beat. They've just got so much balance right across the field. And they're the ones to look out for, because they've got so much depth, great balance across the field, and a lot of contributors. And Treloar to come back into that side too, so he's a superstar. So interesting times for Collingwood. It's there for the taking, and they're looking very, very good. Gold Coast, 2 in a row. Young side, playing with so much energy, so much skill, composure. Stewie Dew's done a great job just to not only get him to kick a score, but actually getting him setting up really well, which is very hard to do with a young team. And Grant Birchall playing his 250th. He's been a great player at Hawthorn. It was good to see him get an opportunity to continue his career, fill that sort of Luke Hodge role up at the Brisbane Lions. And it was good to see him get another game and continue on with his great career.
Well, good Devonport boy from my hometown, Crawford. Did you have to knock that out of him? Or?
Tassie boy. No, we loved him. Like, when he came to Hawthorn, he had a real impact. He's a beautiful kick, and it's good to see him get his body right, because he's really struggled over the last few years. And all those milestone players we love from week to week, but I thought Grant Birchall, great effort just to get himself up and about and head up to beautiful Brisbane and enjoy playing with the Lions, who are on fire.
Well done, Grant Birchall. Chris Fagan said one of the most underrated players, of course, in your premiership era there at Hawthorn. We move on now. Time now, Crawford, to fire up, because it's time for the Sunday roast.
I'm going to hook into, but I think it was... Oh, no, it's going to be Taggers. That's what it's going to be. I wasn't sure. Is it going to be the West Coast Eagles? Is it going to be Richmond to fire up? No, it's going to be Taggers. I just don't understand, when you come up against certain sides, why you don't actually put a lot of time and effort into taking the most important player out of the game as much as you possibly, especially early in the game. I'm happy not to tag them all of the game, but at least get the game on your own terms, take their confidence out of it. If I'm playing and not being tagged and I can get my hands on the footy, your confidence goes through the roof and you just work your way into the game. St Kilda against Collingwood. If ever I'm playing Collingwood, I'm tagging Steele Sidebottom. Why? Even if he only has it 20 times, he's such a beautiful kick. If I'm playing Hawthorn, I'm tagging Chad Wingard, because you know he's got, such beautiful skills, and he does He does everything you want from a player once they get the football. You know, on the weekend we saw Curnow go to Dangerfield. Dangerfield's still a very good player, but Curnow did a great job. And we also saw from a Sydney point of view, we had Hewitt go to Higgins from North Melbourne. Higgins is a wonderful player, but Cunnington goes out of that side, which is a massive win for the Swans. So you've got to hone in on Higgins and take him out of the game. He had 11 touches. Hewitt did a wonderful job. Sydney win the game. So I just don't understand why you're not putting more time and effort into real key players. The coaches will say it's team defence and team midfield, but stop the very best players, especially early in the game, and I reckon it'll help you.
Big clash between Gold Coast and Brisbane next week. Do you tag Matt Rale in just his fourth game?
Do you tag Matt Rale? Well, he's just a contested ball winner. Yeah, you've got to put a lot of time and effort into him. He's kicking goals, he's getting plenty of the footy. And then from a Brisbane point of view, you've got McCluggage, you've got Lachie Neale, you've got those type of players. So you've got to go to town on them. You've got to go really negative early in the game. And then once you work out what's going on, then you can take the handbrake off a little and just release.
Well, tag is obviously a lot more prevalent in your era, Shane. Before we go on that, who do you reckon was the toughest you came up against?
He's going to love me saying this, but he really was fantastic. I thought Kane Corns was an awesome tagger. Had great endurance, could be really attacking, but really could get his head into that space that taggers need to get to and be really negating. So I thought he was a very, very good tagger. And
won plenty of his own footy too, Kane Corns. Well, that's all we've got time for tonight.
Is that it?
You want to keep going?
Yeah, no.
All we've got time for round 3 of full time. Hopefully some more footy for us next week. A lot to unfold in the next few days. All of this brought to you by AIA Vitality. We'll see you again next week, Crawford.
See you there.